Alright, let's give this a shot. The Grand Illusion, Book 1. Starting midway through Chapter 9, the human aura, bioplasma, biofield, or torsion plasma field is the chapter heading. We're going to skip ahead to subchapter titled Inedia, Inedia on page 319. Not exactly sure how to pronounce that. It goes on to say, the Hindu yogini Giribala was one of history's various notable God-realized beings who did not drink or eat for extended periods of time. In her case, that extended period lasted over 50 years. On meeting her and inquiring as to her means of sustenance, Yogananda said to her that her nourishment was obtained from the finer energies of the air and sunlight and through the cosmic power that recharges your body through the medulla oblongata, to which she agreed. Initially, her vow of abstinence from physical sustenance was brought on by the ridicule and scorn poured on her by her mother-in-law as a 12-year-old for her gluttonous eating habits. One day, fed up with the jibs and the jibes, Giribala swore to her unrelenting mother-in-law that she would never touch food again. She was not long afterwards initiated into a Kriya technique by a newfound guru. Evidently, over 56 years later, that vow had held true. The non-eating state, or Inedia, is a yogic power mentioned in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Giribala employed a breathing exercise that affected the Vishuddha, or throat chakra. In Yogananda's words, his chakra, or this chakra, controls the fifth element, Akash, or ether, pervasive in the intra-atomic species of the physical cells. Most of these, in case you're curious, are direct quotes and all have references. You can buy the book online and get directed to these hundreds of references in each chapter. This is well read, this is well researched, and well documented. So the throat chakra, in Yogananda's words, controls the fifth element, the Akash or ether, pervasive in the intraatomic species of the physical cells. Of Kriya Yoga, the Bhagavad Gita says that the yogi halts bodily decay by obtaining additional prana as a result of quieting the lungs and heart's activity. Similarly, mutations of growth in the body can be eliminated by control of the apana, or the eliminating current. A master yogini such as Giribala therefore has total life force control. She stated that she slept very little, since the two states, sleep and awake, were the same to her. This suggests the possibility of total consciousness of astral experiences in the dream states. Instead of sleeping, she meditated at night. She claimed to never experience illness or disease, and to feel slight pain only when accidentally injured. She had no bodily excretions and was able to control her heart rate. Giribala had been placed under observation on 3 separate occasions for testing at the palace of Maharaja of Burdwan. On the first occasion, she stayed free of food for 2 months. Subsequent stays for observation were of 20 and 15 days each. A former neighbor of Giribala's said to Yogananda that he had never once seen her eat or drink during the time as neighbors. The Catholic nun, Therese Newman, born in 1898, was also Inedic. She had been placed under close observation by a team of doctors and nurses and had her own condition of anemia verified over 2 weeks of intense scrutiny. What makes Newman an even more compelling case in one respect is that she never practiced any yogic techniques or any other methods to develop the ability to abstain from food. It seemed to arise as a byproduct of her extreme devotion to the Christ symbolism. Newman did not sleep at all, and had even managed to gain over 5 pounds of weight over 2 days without eating or drinking during the testing. She had also on one occasion spent some 45 minutes clinically dead only to awaken and resume normalcy within roughly an hour, which was attested to by the doctors that were present. Again, references are abound. Unbelievably, despite the fact that from 1922 Newman consumed nothing except for the daily Eucharist, right, which is clearly insufficient to sustain normal human life, she steadily gained weight. In July 1927, she weighed 121 pounds, and in 1953, she had reached a robust 215 pounds. So it's 26 years. 26 years, and she gained 94 pounds. 94 pounds from eating the Holy Eucharist. The skeptic, needless to say, this cannot be explained by orthodox theories of human chemistry and biology. Stick it, science. This cannot be explained by orthodox, the skeptic Dr. Fritz Gerlich actually went to study Newman to expose this Catholic fraud, but wound up reverently writing her biography. Paramahansa Yogananda had the pleasure of meeting the Catholic mystic in his wide travels. Newman, like Giribala, agreed that she lived by the ether, the sun, and the air. Yogananda stated matter-of-factly in his autobiography of a yogi that invisible cosmic energy flows into the body via the medulla oblongata, then being stored in the crown chakra and brain as a reservoir of potential. Motoyama has written that at his institute in Tokyo, experiments have been conducted which support the claim that an awakened Vishuddha chakra in conjunction with other centers makes possible the conscious control of metabolism, food intake, digestion, etc., etc. So the revered yogi's claims are not without support. Another ascetic who survives today without eating is Hira Ratan Manek, born on September 12, 1937, in Bodhavad, India. After his retirement in 1922, he began to research and study the ancient practice of sun gazing, in which he had been interested since his childhood. This method was an old but forgotten one, and that had been practiced in ancient times in many different parts of the world. The method adopted by Manek is to initially look at the early morning sun for a few seconds, and every week to increase the duration by a few seconds, which would ultimately reach a period of several minutes. After about 3 months, he says the brain gets charged and mental strength increases, healing fears and psychosomatic diseases. According to him, at the end of the 6 months, all physical disease is eliminated, and after 8 to 9 months, there is a decline in hunger, which ultimately itself disappears. Manek has undergone several strict fastings during which he relied solely on sun energy and water, and was under the control and observation of various scientific and medical teams. Direct quote from another source. The first of these fastings lasted for 211 days between 1995 and 96 in Calicut, India, directed by Dr. C.K. Ramachandran, a medical expert on allopathy and Ayurvedic medicine. This was followed by a 411-day fast from 2000 to 2001 in Ahmedabad, directed by an international team of 21 medical doctors and scientists led by Dr. Sudhir Shah and Dr. K.K. Shah, the acting president of the Indian Medical Association at the time. Maureen D. Pressman, MD, later joined the team for the next observation on Manek. Going back to the context within the book here, following the compelling results of Ahmedabad, Manek was invited to Thomas Jefferson University and the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia for a 130-day observation period. This scientific team wanted to observe and examine his retina, pineal gland, brain, and was led by Dr. Andrew B. Newberg, a leading authority on the brain, and Dr. George C. Bernard, reportedly the leading authority on the pineal gland. 700 photographs were taken of his brain, showing the cells to be regenerating rather than the tissue atrophying. Furthermore, the pineal gland was unexpectedly large. Its average size is typically about 6 by 6 millimeters, and for Manek, however, it was measured at 8 by 11 millimeters. That's quite a substantial growth. Dr. Sudhir Shah, lead researcher of the team studying Manek's fast in Ahmedabad, wrote that Manek was most likely receiving energy from the sun just as the sages and rishis of yore. Shah implicates the retina and the pineal gland since both possess photoreceptor cells and may be considered photosensitive organs. He goes on to speculate that some process similar to photosynthesis may be taking place. The sun's energy must enter the body somehow to be used as fuel. The unexplored process of energy synthesis and transformation from the sun energy perhaps partly occurs in the pineal. While going through the details of recent scientific literature and also comparing it with ancient Indian spiritual texts, as well as Western occult and New Age, the following things are apparent. The action of the pineal gland is the key step in psychic, spiritual, and energetic transformation processes. Here in this gland, energy processing and redistribution occurs. Dr. Shah suggested that Manek's enlarged pineal gland offered indirect support for the important role it plays in energy transformation. Recall Brennan's description of how light reaches the pituitary and pineal glands and the effects it produces. This was an earlier chapter in the book. Russian researchers Fossar and Bludorf, summarizing the separate research of Pop and Gariev into DNA and its absorption and emission of light, have concluded that light actually represents an important factor in the power supply of the DNA. It provides healthy functioning of all procedures in our cells. There is something else worth noting about these renunciants of which we are speaking. Michael Grosso states that the bodies of some Christian saints behave oddly after death. Perversely, they stay intact, moist, flexible, for months, for decades, sometimes for hundreds of years. Bodies. Let me repeat that. Dead Christian bodies. For months, decades, sometimes hundreds of years, stay intact, moist, and flexible. They exude mysterious oils, occasionally bleed, and give off remarkable fragrances as if some form of energy persists to hold entropy at bay. This defiance of decay was also the case with Yogananda. His body mysteriously remained intact, undecayed for weeks after death. Evidently, this is not entirely uncommon for advanced yogis. Harry T. Rowe, Los Angeles mortuary director at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, in which Yogananda's body was temporarily housed, said in a notarized letter to Yogananda's Self-Relationship Fellowship that the absence of any visual signs of decay in the dead body offers the most extraordinary case in our experience. No physical disintegration was visible in the body even 20 days after death. No indication of mold was visible on the skin, and no visible desiccation or drying up took place in the body tissues. That's remarkable. Serious yogic practice in meditation does not merely preserve one's youthful appearance. In the case of some enlightened souls, it mobilizes the body's subtle energy system against entropy even after consciousness had ceased to occupy the physical vessel. Herbert Thurston in 1952 and Joan Carroll Cruz in 1977 assessed the eyewitness testimony on bodily incorruption favorably, contrary to nature. Sorry, this is going into a quote. Contrary to nature, the corpses stay soft, flexible, and lifelike in color, and occasionally seem to move, bleed, and exude fragrant oils. This is known also to Tibet Buddhism. Gyalwang Karmapa, a great master and head of one of the four main schools of Tibetan Buddhism, died in hospital in the USA in 1981. Among other bizarre phenomena that baffled the medical attendants, when he finally died, his body defied the usual rigor mortis pattern. After a while, it was realized that the area around his heart was still warm. Dr. Ranulfo Sanchez, chief of surgery, examined the area right over the heart around 36 later and confirmed that it was somehow warmer than the surrounding area. Something he could offer zero medical explanation for. Randall reports that Father John Baptiste Vianney's corpse remained incorruptible from his death in 1959 through to 1904, when his tomb was opened in preparation for the process of beatification. The esteemed Tibetan master Jamyang Khyentse's body demonstrated incorruptibility for weeks, even in the heat of the Indian summer. It is known that some masters actually sense their death or know when it is due in advance and enter into a meditative posture and state of consciousness, the Mahasamadhi, moments before the transition. This altered state of awareness and the heightened pranic energy levels may configure the etheric body in such a way that it remains negentropic long after the animating consciousness has vacated the body. One might ask if the physical body can become purified through deliberate spiritual practices and lifestyle. No meat, no alcohol, etc., etc. In such a way that it allows the etheric body template to remain attached to the body post-mortem instead of detaching and beginning the process of decomposition as what we think of as per normal. Asceticism seems to be a common feature in cases of post-mortem incorruptibility and other phenomena such as levitation. Somehow we might speculate the etheric fields of these individuals remain both vital and attached, though their animating consciousness has decoupled from the body. According to researcher Tom Montauk, the etheric energies essentially exist in the time domain, in the theoretical realm of the imaginary, a 90 degrees rotation into a dimension of impossibility. To him, as noted in chapter 8, prior to this chapter, the etheric field is responsible for the unpredictability of quantum biological behavior. Etheric influences also run in reverse time, at least as far as its interactions with our physical realm are concerned. I pointed out earlier that the etheric and astral planes can, for convenience, be subsumed under the time-space banner though the etheric is really just a part of our physical reality that is harder to detect. In time-space, time is real, and space is imaginary. Thus, the continued attachment of a vital etheric field would serve to hold physical molecular processes of entropy at bay. Time for the renunciant's body would stand still. It would not decay. In this context, it is interesting to know that phase-conjugated or time-reversed waves can be produced by certain kinds of controlled plasmas. It is also interesting to note in passing that meat treated energetically by a healer has been reported to exhibit similar incorruptibility as mentioned above, despite being unrefrigerated for a month, and in the case of an English woman with the same ability for years. Therefore, in our terminology, the etheric plasma field is probably responsible for corporeal incorruptibility. Corporal incorruptibility. In 1993, Konstantin Korotkov conducted investigations into the Kirlian glows radiated by the bodies of 10 recently deceased people between the ages of 19 and 70. Analyzing the energetic output from the left-hand fingers of the cadavers, he found that there was no qualitative difference between the discharge of the living and deceased. Monitoring for between 3 and 5 days each, he found that the glow intensity of a deceased individual was lower than a living person's, but it did not drop to zero, as may have been expected, but rather to some fixed value. Korotkov reports that when chakras begin to operate in the opposite direction, they dump energy causing discharge bursts, the kind observed with his cadavers. It may be worthwhile to take these GDV measurements from the body of a newly deceased master yogi over a period of weeks. A study of the energy emissions from an incorruptible body would likely prove very interesting. Emissions may be significantly lower in intensity, establishing a smooth and stable minimum baseline more rapidly than the emissions of normal people, with the body only decomposing extremely slowly for the first few weeks or months, or perhaps not even at all. Recall Pop's research showing healthier systems have lower photonic output. Note also that Korotkov's finding of a small but non-zero photonic output plateau for cadavers is not surprising. Knowing that DNA, which both stores and emits biophotons, and sonic quasi-particles referred to as phonons, acts as a harmonic oscillator, meaning that it is extremely efficient in storing this energy and therefore leaks very little of it into the environment. If energy is equivalent to information, and as noted, photons are considered to be pure, localized information, then it is if a yogi's incorrupt body retains its informational integrity for longer. Is this the result of a mass transposon jumping DNA? Jumping ants? Is this a result of a mass transposon activation, what microbiologist Colm Kelleher calls a transposition burst, having reconfigured and upgraded the yogi's genome during their training, owing to the higher frequency consciousness or torsion plasma energy they had harnessed? Mobile genetic elements known as jumping DNA include both transposons, which can move from one area of a cell genome to another area, and the more recently discovered retrotransposons, which, unlike transposons, use a copy and paste mechanism in replicating themselves in order to insinuate their copies into other regions of the genome via an RNA intermediary. Transposons, originally discovered in the 1940s by Dr. Barbara McClintock, 1902 to 1992, she passed, who eventually received a Nobel Prize in 1983 for her research. Jumping DNA reportedly make up as much as half of the total DNA nucleotides, some 97 to 98% of our DNA being originally dismissed by Western science as junk, since it is not responsible for constructing the physical form. These mobile elements are non-protein coding. They don't make proteins. These are the elements that we spoke of earlier in the chapter when discussing Luckman's DNA and Kundalini activation technique, the regenetics method. Jumping DNA being activated in stages starting with potentiation. We have already covered in brief many of the effects that can result from this event. Perhaps another possible effect of large-scale DNA activation is bodily incorruptibility. While a large portion of the non-protein coding junk regions of protein is comprised of a variable number tandemly repeating sequences known as satellite DNA. These may be even more significant with regard to the phenomenon of bodily incorruptibility. Microbiologist William Brown believes that through specific conformational arrangements, satellite DNA interface with the morphic field. Various conformations have specific resonances with the morphic field and can therefore tune into different information programs. Since satellite DNA is very specific to each person, each of us tunes into a distinct and unique morphogenetic pattern. It seems likely that both jumping DNA and satellite DNA interface with the morphic field, thus responding to alterations in one's state of consciousness and morphic fields. Satellite DNA's ability to expand the number of repeating sequences means an increase in the information carrying capacity of DNA. As a fractal antenna, DNA interacts with the vacuum aether zero-point field, transducing the zero-point energy, which interacts with our consciousness. A greater interaction between our DNA and the torsion scalar forces in the vacuum might equate to expanded consciousness, while a lesser interactivity would result in a contracted awareness. Thus, certain modular arrangements of DNA would be more conducive to conscious awareness. So by opening up and expanding your capacity to take in more light from the sun gives your body more ability to fight back what we term generally as entropy, or loss of information, or could be generally referred to as age, decay. These things, the entire reason why most people buy stuff, to escape their mortality. Turns out, if you just open up to a little bit of sun each day, you could have a completely different experience of reality. How phenomenal. How phenomenal. How bizarre. How bizarre. Now, the book itself, The Grand Illusion, by Brendan D. Murphy, definitely recommend. He's got a second one coming out very soon, and it's going to be the worldwide authority. I have no doubt, I might be exaggerating a little bit, but I'm expecting it to be the worldwide authority on the subject of NDEs and what happens after death. I highly suggest you get started, because humanity is waiting for you to catch up on these basic bits of information that we think of as spiritual evolution. It's time to grow up, folks. The Grand Illusion by Brendan D. Murphy. Go grab yourself a copy. Fucking amazing.